In the transaction notes, I always wrote the same thing for parents. Then I closed the banking app and moved on. I never checked if mom got the envelope. I never asked if dad's prescriptions were covered. I assumed it was all being handled. That trust was my comfort, my blindfold, and, looking back now, my greatest mistake. I wanted my parents to live easier, to feel the weight of years slip off their shoulders. I didn't care if they knew it was me. I didn't need their praise. Quietly, in the background, I would fulfill my duty as their son. Life in Austin was falling into place. My days had rhythm. Mornings began with black coffee at my desk, the screen glowing in front of me as I tapped away at lines of code. From the office window, I could see the streets alive with energy. Buses pulling in, cyclists weaving between cars, people chasing their own dreams. And there I was, finally building mine. But no matter how far I was from Beckley, I carried my parents with me. That monthly transfer wasn't just money, it was a tether. A reminder that my success wasn't mine alone. It belonged to them too. I imagined my mom using that cash to buy dad's medicine, patch the roof, or finally rest without worrying about bills. I didn't question. I didn't call to confirm. I trusted Chase to stand in for me, until the cracks began to show. Sometimes on calls, mom's voice trembled. "Your dad's medicine costs so much, Alvin. The roof's leaking again, it cost $1,000 to fix." Her words dug into me like needles. My heart clenched with guilt. If she was still struggling, was I not sending enough? I tightened my own belt. Some months, I sent $2,700. Other times, $3,000. That meant fewer dinners out, fewer nights with friends. I walked past things I wanted in store windows and told myself no. I didn't complain. I believed sacrifice was the price of love. Meanwhile, on my phone screen, Chase was living larger than ever. A new SUV gleamed in his photos. A gold watch caught the light on his wrist. There he was, grinning in selfies at upscale bars, captions boasting, "Big work, big life." I stared at those pictures late at night, the questions circling in my head like restless birds. Where was the money coming from? He had no steady job, no real business I could name. And yet, I pushed the doubts aside. Maybe, I told myself, he'd finally struck gold. Maybe one of his ventures had taken off. I wanted to believe it. I didn't want to think ill of my brother. Still, a small, nagging voice whispered from the back of my mind, "Something isn't right." Amid all this, light broke through. Her name was Pamela. She was in marketing, working just a few floors below me. I first noticed her during a lunch break. Her smile had a warmth that drew me in, and her eyes, they didn't just look at you, they listened. At first, our conversations were short, clumsy even. I rambled about debugging stubborn code. She told me about campaigns she was building. But soon, coffee breaks turned into after-work dinners. Then late-night walks through Austin streets. Then something I had never known before, companionship that felt safe. Pamela wasn't just my girlfriend. She became my confidant. The first person I allowed to see the raw truth inside me. One evening, under the soft glow of a street lamp in a quiet park, I told her everything. About Beckley. About Chase. About the shadow I'd lived in my whole life. About the money I was sending through him. She didn't interrupt. She just held my hand and listened. When I finished, she said softly, "Alvin, what you're doing for your parents is beautiful. But they need to know it's you. They deserve to see your heart." I forced a smile and shook my head. "No. I don't need them to know. I just want things simple. Discreet." Her eyes narrowed with concern. "You trust Chase too much. Be careful. Not everyone is as they seem." Her words lingered, but I brushed them off. I didn't want to doubt him. I didn't want to live in suspicion. Still, Pamela brought light into my world. She pulled me out of the shadows I had wrapped around myself for years. She dragged me to live music shows and little bars. She laughed as she tried to teach me to dance, even though my steps were clumsy. She cooked with me in my small apartment, the smell of garlic and pasta sauce filling the room, turning 4 plain walls into a home. With Pamela, for the first time in years, I felt something I thought I'd lost, Hope Point one evening, after a brutal week of deadlines, I dragged myself home and collapsed onto the couch. My head was pounding, my body drained. Then, like a miracle, Pamela showed up at my door. She carried a plate of homemade cookies, still warm, smelling of cinnamon and sugar. We sat together, watching an old comedy film. Laughter spilled out of me, real and unguarded, until my sides ached. In that moment, I wasn't the forgotten son. I wasn't the shadow. I was just Alvin. Pamela leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You don't need to be like anyone else. You're Alvin. And that's enough." Her words wrapped around me like a blanket. The heaviness I had carried for so long began to lift. For the first time, I felt Chase's shadow shrinking, slowly being replaced by the warmth of her love. But even in that joy, her earlier warning echoed inside me. "Be careful. You trust him too much." I wanted to believe Chase would never hurt us. I wanted to believe that beneath the designer suits and the flashy photos, he was still my brother. And yet, the unease was there, gnawing quietly, waiting to surface. I had no idea how close I was to the truth. A truth that would tear through me like fire. A truth waiting for me at my mother's birthday party, the night everything I believed about family would be turned upside down. Mom was turning 65. For weeks, I planned something special. I wanted her to feel cherished, not overlooked. I searched every electronics store in Austin, testing camera after camera until I found the perfect one. Compact, simple, with a bright screen and easy buttons. Perfect for a woman who once told me she wanted to capture her daisies in bloom, or the family gathered at the table. Pamela helped me choose. She smiled as we wrapped it in green paper, Mom's favorite color, and slid a card inside. "Happy birthday, Mom. With love, Alvin and Pamela." This wasn't just a gift. It was a piece of me, offered in the hope that maybe, finally, she would see me for who I was. Pamela agreed to fly with me to Beckley. It would be the first time I ever brought a girlfriend home. I wanted my family to see I wasn't the boy hiding in Chase's shadow anymore. I was a man now, with a career, with love, with a life of my own. On the flight, I stared out the window at the endless white clouds. My chest tightened with nerves. Pamela squeezed my hand. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine. I'm excited to meet them, even if they're a little biased, like you said." I smiled at her faith, though my heart still carried doubt. I told her everything, about the comparisons, about the pain, but a part of me clung to hope. Maybe this birthday would change something. Maybe tonight, they'd see me differently. The drive from the airport was a journey through memory. The rolling hills of West Virginia rose around us, green and quiet, like they had been my whole childhood. Then the old family house came into view, the chipped porch, the weathered shingles, Mom's garden bursting with yellow daisies. I stepped out of the car, inhaling deeply. The air smelled of damp grass and earth. Pamela followed, her suitcase rolling behind her, her smile soft, as though she belonged here. Mom opened the door. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her, her hair more silver. She hugged me tight, then turned to Pamela, pulling her into her arms. "Come in, don't be shy." Pamela's eyes sparkled. "Thank you. I've heard so much about you from Alvin." Inside, Dad sat in his armchair. His cough rattled through the room, his face pale and lined from years underground in the mines. Still, when he looked at me, he smiled, a tired, fragile smile, but it reached his eyes. And then Chase walked in, fresh from the kitchen, dressed like a man stepping out of a magazine spread, navy suit, crisp white shirt, a gleaming watch catching the light. He clapped me on the shoulder, laughing loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're back, huh? Still the tech guy. Never change." I forced a smile, but I saw it, the flicker in Mom's eyes. That glance she cast at me, then at him, as if her gaze naturally landed where the brightness was. Pamela leaned in close, whispering, "Your brother sure knows how to steal the spotlight." I nodded, saying nothing. My silence was my armor. The living room had been decorated for the party. Gold tinsel hung across the walls, balloons floated near the ceiling, The table was set for a celebration. On the surface, it was warmth and festivity. But beneath it, something darker was brewing. And I was walking straight into it. The dining table glowed under the warm light, covered with cakes, plates of cookies, and a tall vase of fresh daisies Mom had cut that morning. Their petals opened wide, as if trying to brighten the room. Relatives crowded around the table, their voices rising and falling like overlapping waves of chatter and laughter. Aunt Linda was there, leaning toward Chase with that familiar glimmer in her eyes, as though he could do no wrong. Uncle Frank, animated as always, retold the same stories from his youth, making the neighbors chuckle politely. Pamela, with her natural warmth, slipped into the circle like she'd always belonged. She laughed with Aunt Linda, talking about her marketing job in Austin, about campaigns, billboards, stories she helped bring to life. I watched her, pride swelling in my chest. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was proof that I was building something real. Someone who saw me. Someone who valued me. But then, like clockwork, the conversation shifted. It always shifted. Aunt Linda set her teacup down, eyes twinkling as she turned to Chase. "You're such a dutiful son, Chase. Sending money to your parents every month, steady, dependable. This family's lucky to have you." The others chimed in almost instantly. "That boy knows how to take care of his family. Not like some who only think about themselves." Their words weren't directed at me, but every syllable landed like a blow. My chest tightened, my jaw clenched. Pamela's hand slipped under the table, her fingers wrapping around mine. Her grip was steady, her eyes telling me without words, "Don't let them break you." But then Mom spoke. Her gaze found me, sharp, disapproving. "Alvin, why can't you be even a fraction like your brother? You should learn from him. Chase is the one taking care of this whole family. You know that." Her words sliced through me like glass. The wound wasn't new, but in that moment, it tore open, raw and bleeding. Pamela's hand tightened, her whisper urgent. "Stay calm, Alvin. Please." But I couldn't. Not anymore. The years of silence. The years of comparisons. The years of wiring money home, month after month, while no one noticed. While Chase basked in their praise. The fire inside me ignited. My chair screeched against the wooden floor as I stood, startling the room. My voice shook, but it carried a weight I had never unleashed before. "If that's the case, then let Chase handle all the bills from now on. Because I'm done sending money." The laughter stopped. The air thickened. Every eye turned to me. Dad's cough rattled the silence before his hoarse voice broke through. "What money? We've never received a cent from you." Mom's lips tightened. "Don't talk nonsense, Alvin. You've been off in Austin, living your own life, never worrying about us. When have you ever sent money?" The blood pounded in my ears. My face burned. Pamela looked at me, her eyes fierce with both worry and faith. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and unlocked the screen. I scrolled, my fingers firm, and there it was, months of transfers. Every one labeled with the same note for parents. I held the screen up, my voice cutting through the room, calm and cold.
"Here, look."
For the past 2 years, every month, 2,500, sometimes more, I've sent money to Chase. To give to you. I looked around, my chest rising and falling. "You say I don't care? Then what is this?" The room froze. Mom's hand trembled as if she wanted to touch the phone but couldn't. Dad sat up straighter, his sunken eyes wide with disbelief. "Alvin, is this true?" The murmurs began. Aunt Linda's admiration curdled into confusion. "My God, what's going on?" Uncle Frank, normally cheerful, turned grim, his voice heavy. "Chase, explain this." All eyes swung toward him. The golden boy. The favored son. Pamela stood, her voice steady but soft, like a bell cutting through the fog. "Alvin has worked so hard to support this family. He never bragged. He never wanted recognition. But I think everyone needs to know the truth." She glanced at me, her eyes both fierce and tender. "He lived frugally in Austin, working late nights, sending money so his parents wouldn't suffer. And yet all this time no one knew. She turned back to the family, her voice unwavering. There's no misunderstanding here. The truth is right in front of you. Then she looked at me again, her eyes filled with strength and sorrow. You're not wrong, Alvin. You never were. And for the first time that night, I felt seen. The truth had to come out. No matter how much it cut, no matter how much it shattered what little balance was left in this family. Our small living room in Beckley, once the backdrop of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and long summer nights filled with laughter, had turned into a stage. A stage for betrayal. The single ceiling bulb hummed faintly above us, casting long, restless shadows across stunned faces. The balloons and gold tinsel meant to celebrate Mom's 65th looked almost grotesque now, decorations for a party that had suddenly twisted into a reckoning. Mom sat frozen on the couch. Her hands trembled, her eyes locked on my phone screen, where months of transfers glared back in cold, undeniable numbers. Dad, pale and gaunt from years underground, forced himself upright in his chair, his weak chest rising and falling with effort. His eyes, wide and hollow, searched for answers he didn't want to find. Around us, relatives whispered in low, broken tones. Aunt Linda leaned closer to Uncle Frank, her earlier pride in Chase now soured with confusion. Neighbors glanced at one another, as if unsure whether to speak or stay silent. The warmth of the gathering had evaporated, leaving only tension thick enough to choke on. Finally, Mom's voice cracked through the silence. It shook, fragile but sharp. Chase, you told me that money was from you. You said you were the one providing. Her eyes pierced him, pain, disbelief, betrayal all tangled into one. It was as if a part of her foundation had crumbled right in front of her. Chase lowered his head. His face burned red, his fists clenched tight against his knees. He stayed silent, like a child caught in a lie, shrinking under the weight of every stare in the room. I stood still, my pulse thundering in my ears. It wasn't anger boiling inside me. It was something deeper, something heavier. The grief of realizing my brother, the boy I once trusted above anyone else, had torn that trust apart with his own hands. Pamela's voice broke the tension, calm yet firm. Alvin loves this family. He's given without asking for anything back. He doesn't deserve to be doubted like this. Her words washed over me like rain on fire, cooling the rage clawing at my chest. Dad leaned forward, his voice hoarse, but steady.
Chase, speak.
What happened to the money? What did you do with what your brother sent? It wasn't anger in his tone. It was worse. Disappointment. A deep, bone-cutting disappointment that weighed heavier than any shout. Chase lifted his head, but his eyes darted away. He stammered, his voice small. I didn't mean to, Dad. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back. He sucked in a breath, his shoulders shaking. And then the truth spilled out. I kept most of the money. I only gave you a little each month, just enough to make it seem like I was helping. I needed the rest for debts. For appearances. I didn't want you to think I was a failure. The room sank into silence again. But this silence was heavier. Darker. It pressed down on all of us like a weight too heavy to carry. 2 years of my life. Pinching pennies in Austin, skipping dinners, ignoring small joys so I could send money home. 2 years of sacrifice, of thinking I was giving my parents comfort. And all along, it had been swallowed by Chase's image, his desperate need to play the perfect son. I looked at him, searching his face for the brother I once knew. The boy who used to chase me barefoot across the backyard. The boy who once broke a cookie in half so we could share. That boy was gone. Before me now sat a man drowning in shame, his eyes darting anywhere but mine. Pamela stood close, her voice steady, carrying the weight of what I couldn't say. Alvin never wanted recognition. He only wanted his parents to live without worry. But this family needs to face the truth. Not just about the money, but about his heart. Then she turned to me, her gaze soft, unwavering. You make me proud, Alvin. You didn't want to defend yourself, but tonight you had to. You spoke because it was the only way to protect your dignity. Her words soothed me, yet they also cut deep with their reminder. If I'd listened to her months ago, if I'd chosen transparency from the start, maybe none of this would have spiraled so far out of control. Chase broke the silence again, his voice trembling, thick with shame. Alvin,
I'm sorry.
I never meant to hurt you. I was drowning in debt. My projects weren't what I said. I lost money, borrowed more, and I needed the money to keep up the act. I didn't want Mom and Dad to see me as a failure. He bowed his head, his words breaking apart. I was wrong. I didn't think it would go this far. His confession hung in the air like smoke. It made me angry. It made me pity him. It made me realize the boy I grew up with had been lost somewhere between pride and shame. Anger tore at me. Anger that Chase had lied, used me, drained me of sacrifice I had carried alone. But beneath that anger, another ache lingered. He was still my brother. And part of me pitied him because I knew he was also a prisoner. A prisoner of the lies he had built around himself, of the impossible expectations he thought he had to uphold. The truth came out like shattered glass. Every gleaming post on his social media, every photo with a new SUV, the expensive watch, the bars and parties, it was all smoke. All of it propped up on loans, debts, and the money I had sent home, meant for our parents. He had funneled it into appearances, feeding the illusion of being the golden son, while Mom and Dad saw only crumbs. A few $100s here and there, just enough to maintain the performance. I stared at him, my chest heavy. The betrayal burned deep, but what cut deeper was the realization that our divide wasn't just about personality anymore. It was about truth, about who had been honest and who had chosen the mask. Mom broke down, covering her face with her hands. Her sobs shook the air. She reached for me, her grip trembling, her voice torn in pieces. Alvin, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were carrying so much. I was wrong. All these years, I was wrong. Dad's voice followed, rough and broken, each word scraped raw. The night of my mother's birthday should have been a celebration. Laughter.
Cake.
Family warmth. But for me, it turned into a battlefield. She looked at me, her eyes sharp, her words sharper. Alvin, you'll never measure up to your brother. Chase is the one who takes care of this family. The room spun. My chest tightened. Years of swallowing bitterness suddenly clawed their way out. I rose from my chair, my voice trembling yet fierce. If that's how you see it, then from now on let Chase pay all the bills. Don't expect another dime from me. The air collapsed into silence. Forks froze midair. Faces drained of color. My parents stared at me as if I had grown two heads. What money? We've never received a cent from you. My pulse pounded in my ears as I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone, unlocked the screen, and opened my bank statements. Line after line glared back in black and white. Months of transfers, quiet sacrifices they had never once noticed. The truth stared at them. And for the first time in my life, my parents had nothing to say. My name is Alvin Grant. I was born and raised in Beckley, West Virginia, a small town tucked between rolling green hills where neighbors wave at each other on the street and family stories echo around kitchen tables. But my own childhood wasn't the picture-perfect memory people in town like to paint. Mine was a long, silent battle, fought in the shadows of comparison. I was the older son, but somehow always the lesser one. The boy who never quite shone bright enough. My younger brother Chase, 4 years behind me, stole the light before I ever had the chance. He was magnetic, charming, a natural entertainer. Adults adored him. His laughter filled rooms, his timing with a joke flawless. Chase was the golden child.
Me?
I was the background character in my own family. Quiet.
Reserved.
Awkward in conversation. I never knew how to make relatives laugh. Never knew how to command attention. I learned early that no matter what I did, all eyes would find their way back to him. My father, Gordon, worked in the mines. Long days swallowed by darkness, his skin stained with coal dust, his palms rough as sandpaper. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it was usually to lift Chase higher. My mother, Monica, an accountant at a local firm, kept ledgers by day and found endless energy to brag about her clever son by night. That son was never me. They didn't mean to hurt me. At least, that's what I tell myself. But favoritism doesn't always come in shouts or slaps. It seeps in, quiet and steady, like dust coating everything in its path. Over the years, I became invisible in my own home. Excuses disguised as reasons explained away every oversight. I wasn't funny enough. I wasn't bold enough. My grades were fine, but never medal-worthy. Chase had trophies, applause, stories worth repeating. I had a desk, an old second-hand computer my father once dragged home, and endless nights lost in dismantling and rebuilding its fragile parts. Technology fascinated me. Science fiction lit my imagination on fire. But to my parents, it was all useless. Wasted time. Proof that something was wrong with me. Those comparisons carved wounds no one could see. Wounds that throbbed in the quiet hours of the night, when the house had gone still, and I lay staring at the ceiling, wondering why love had to feel like a contest. You need to learn from your brother, my father often told me, handing back my report card. My grades were steady, but steady wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough when Chase stood beside me. I didn't hate him. I loved him. He was my little brother. But every time I heard their praise, every time I saw the way their faces lit up for him, I retreated a little further into myself. Brick by brick, I built walls around my heart because it hurt too much to hope. One Christmas still burns in my memory. The family gathered by the tree, laughter spilling into the warm glow of the lights. Chase sang Jingle Bells, his voice carrying the room, and applause erupted like fireworks. I sat quietly with a small gift in my hands, a lamp I had built from scraps, wires, and an old LED bulb. My heart raced as I handed it over, desperate for some recognition. My mother glanced at it once and dismissed it with a smile that cut deeper than a knife. You should spend more time playing with your brother instead of wasting hours on these useless things. I nodded, swallowing the tears clawing up my throat. I carried my disappointment back to my room and sat in the darkness, the lamp glowing faintly on the desk beside me. That night, I asked myself the question that would haunt me for years. Would I ever be enough for them? Or was I destined to remain nothing more than a shadow trailing behind my brother's light? Childhood taught me one truth. Family love isn't always fair. And the wounds it leaves, invisible to the world, can cut deeper than any blade. Books became my escape. Technology my refuge. In those pages, in those circuits, nobody compared me to anyone. Nobody told me I wasn't enough. For a while, I could breathe. Yet even as I lost myself in those worlds, I carried a quiet longing. I wanted my parents to look at me, really see me, and understand that I wasn't just Chase's shadow. I was Alvin. Different.
Quiet. But worthy.
I thought my teenage years would change things. I believed I'd find my own corner of the sky, a place where my light could shine without being eclipsed. But instead, Chase's shadow grew longer, darker, and high school only deepened the silence around me. At Beckley High, I was still that quiet kid, the one who drifted through crowded hallways like a ghost, unseen and unremarkable. I didn't blend in with the cliques. The laughter in the cafeteria, the energy of Friday night dances, the endless chatter in the locker-lined corridors, all of it felt like a foreign language. I gravitated to the library instead. I buried myself in books about electronics, or sat in the computer lab typing clumsy lines of code on outdated PCs. I found joy in soldering circuits, in watching a small program run after hours of trial and error. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My world.
My joy. My sanctuary.
To classmates, I was that weird kid glued to a computer. To teachers, I was a decent student, but nothing worth remembering. Chase, on the other hand, was untouchable. The school adored him. He was a starter on the basketball team, the smooth MC at pep rallies, the boy who could make a room explode with laughter. Teachers praised his charm. Students followed his lead. Even adults couldn't resist him. I'll never forget sitting in a parent-teacher conference, listening from the corner as my homeroom teacher spoke. Chase is truly an outstanding student, always full of energy. My mother nodded, her face glowing with pride, as if the praise was hers to claim. Then the teacher's eyes flicked toward me. Alvin does fine. He just needs to be more outgoing. That single sentence pressed against my chest like a stone. And when my mom eagerly agreed, it sank deeper, another pebble added to the weight I carried every day. At home, the comparison sharpened. My father's voice would swell with pride whenever Chase walked through the door with a medal or a certificate. Look at your brother. That's the kind of energy that leads to success.
You stay so quiet.
What will you ever achieve? My mother's words cut differently, softer but more precise. Alvin, you need to talk more.
Connect.
If you're not good with people, you won't get far. I nodded. I never fought back. But each remark was a slash to an old wound, reopening it, making it bleed again. It wasn't that I didn't try. I studied hard. I kept my grades steady. And inside me, a dream burned quietly. I wanted to be an engineer. Circuits made sense to me. Code followed rules that no one bent. In that world, there was order, logic.
No favoritism.
Just me and the work I built with my own hands. I started researching colleges, reading everything I could about West Virginia University's engineering program. I pictured myself in a lab, building something real, something that proved I didn't need to be chased to matter. I didn't share that dream with my parents. Whenever I mentioned engineering, my mother dismissed it. What good will those machines do? Learn to talk to people like your brother. That's what will carry you.
Still, I tried.
I joined the science club, hoping maybe, just maybe, I could show them another side of me. Our group built a small model rocket. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and we were chosen to present it at the school's science fair. For the first time, I felt hope. I imagined my parents sitting in the crowd, smiling at me the way they smiled at Chase. I rehearsed my presentation, palms sweating, heart pounding, ready to earn their pride. But on the day of the fair, their seats were empty. Chase had a basketball game, and they had chosen him once again. I stood on that stage under the bright lights, forcing my voice steady, trying to focus on the rocket instead of the void in the audience. That night, when I came home, my mother brushed it off with a casual smile. I was busy at your brother's game. Next time let me know so I can plan. I nodded, but inside I knew there would never be a next time. Then one morning an envelope arrived. West Virginia University. Electrical Engineering. Acceptance. I tore it open with shaking hands and read the words that felt like salvation. In that moment, it was as if a beam of light pierced through the endless tunnel of my life. Standing at the university gates later that fall, staring at the towering halls and gleaming labs filled with machines I'd only dreamed of, I told myself, this is where I belong. At last, I was stepping out of the shadow. College wasn't just a chance to study. It was my chance to breathe, to finally step outside the shadow of my brother and begin carving out an identity of my own. For the first time, I felt like I had space to exist, not as Chase's brother, but as Alvin. Those first days in Morgantown felt like water to a man dying of thirst. I threw myself into the work. Hours in the lab, soldering tiny wires, building circuits that hummed to life under my fingertips. Nights in front of glowing screens, writing clumsy code until the commands finally ran clean. The first time I saw "Hello World" appear across that monitor, my heart surged like I had created something alive, a new world spun from nothing but logic and patience. I didn't need a crowd. I didn't need applause. The quiet hum of the machines was enough. Each project pulled me closer to the dream I carried, to one day stand tall as an engineer. While I buried myself in textbooks and scraped through part-time jobs to keep tuition paid, Chase walked an entirely different road. He dropped out after a year. School's too restrictive, he told everyone. He wanted freedom, big ventures, big risks. He began throwing himself into vague business schemes, each one sounding bigger than the last, apps that would change the world, deals with powerful entrepreneurs, investments that promised overnight success. Every time he came home, he carried himself like a star stepping off a stage. Crisp shirts, the latest phone gleaming in his hand, stories about contracts on the verge of being signed. I sat across from him at the dinner table, staring at my worn sneakers, and wondered where his money came from when he had no job. But my parents didn't question. They never did. They looked at him as though he had already made it. Chase dares to dream big, my father would say, his voice swelling with pride. Then his eyes would cut to me. But you, Alvin, you're just working regular jobs. What's that going to get you? Learn from your brother. The words stung like salt pressed into an open wound. My chest burned with the things I wanted to scream. That every month I skipped meals. That I scraped together rent dollar by dollar. That my hands ached from bussing tables and washing dishes before rushing back to finish assignments. But I stayed silent, swallowing my anger the way I always had. What hurt most wasn't just the praise they showered on him, it was the blind faith they gave him while I was left to fend for myself. Chase could ask for anything. A new venture. A can't-miss opportunity. A fancy dinner to impress a so-called partner. And my parents would reach into their savings without hesitation. Sometimes they even borrowed money just to feed his ambitions. Chase needs this chance to rise, my mother would say, her voice calm, as though it were the most obvious truth in the world. Meanwhile, I was surviving on coffee shop wages, wiping down tables, carrying trays, washing dishes in the back of a noisy restaurant, fixing old computers for dorm mates just to afford second-hand textbooks. Once, I gathered enough courage to call home. I asked my mother for a little help, just enough to buy a technical book my course required. She sighed on the other end of the line.
Things are tight, Alvin.
I just sent money to Chase for his business. You'll have to manage. When the call ended, I sat on my narrow bed staring at the chipped walls of my rented room. A stack of dog-eared books leaned on the desk, their spines broken from too many hands before mine. I clenched my jaw and whispered to myself, "Try harder. You have no choice." My college years became a blur of exhaustion. A machine's life.
Work. Study.
Work again. Always racing against time, always pushing myself to keep my grades at the top. Slowly, my effort paid off. I landed an internship at a small tech firm in Morgantown. For the first time, I worked alongside real engineers, men and women who lived the life I dreamed of. I called home, excited, ready to share the news. I wanted them to hear the pride in my voice. But my mother only replied with a faint, distracted, "That's good, Alvin. Keep being independent." That was the last time I shared my achievements with them. After that, I saved my joy for my friends, the ones who understood the value of a circuit that finally ran, the beauty of a piece of code working seamlessly. While I quietly built my future, Chase built an image. His social media was filled with pictures of sleek cars he posed beside, upscale bars he checked into, expensive watches gleaming on his wrist. Underneath, captions like, "The road to success is never easy." I scrolled through those posts late at night, my stomach tight with questions. Where did the money come from? How could he flaunt wealth when our parents, who had spent their lives scraping together savings, were now bending under the weight of his endless requests? One afternoon, I overheard my mother speaking to a neighbor on the phone. Her voice carried down the line, bright with pride. She was talking about Chase, about some big project he was working on, as if he were already a man of extraordinary success. When she mentioned me, it was almost an afterthought. Alvin's in college. Probably going to be an engineer. A small line. No warmth. No pride. Just a fact stated like the weather. Even from miles away, I could still feel his shadow pressing down on me. Every phone call home was the same. My mother's voice bursting with excitement as she recounted Chase's latest grand idea, his bold ventures, his business plans, his vision for success. When she finally turned the conversation toward me, it was with quick, perfunctory questions. How's school? Doing okay? I'd answer in short sentences, knowing she wasn't really listening. I loved my family. I loved my brother. But being overlooked time and again pushed me further away. I began to tell myself I didn't need their attention. I didn't need their applause. I would prove my worth not through bragging or showmanship, but through results. Through hard-earned achievements that spoke for themselves. After 4 long, Grinding years at West Virginia University, I walked across the stage with a degree in electrical engineering clutched in my hand and a job offer waiting for me from a tech company in Austin, Texas. That offer letter felt like a key to a new life. For the first time, I could see the horizon stretching wide and open before me. Austin was nothing like Beckley. The city buzzed with energy. Towering skyscrapers reached into the Texas sky, hipster coffee shops lined the streets, and the tech scene pulsed with innovation. I found myself surrounded by colleagues who spoke my language, the language of circuits, code, and ideas. Each day, I worked on projects that challenged me, alongside people who burned with the same passion I carried inside for so long. The paycheck was decent, more than enough to live comfortably. But comfort wasn't what I wanted. I rented a modest apartment. I ate simple meals.
I wore the same shirts until they faded.
Most of my salary went straight into paying off the student loans that still loomed over me like ghosts from my college years. I didn't care about sleek cars or designer clothes, the things Chase paraded around like trophies. What I craved was stability, something solid, something no one could take away from me. For once, I believed I was on a path that might finally earn my parents' pride. But then the phone rang. My mother's voice trembled on the other end. Dad's health had broken down. Years in the coal mines had scarred his lungs. The dust he had breathed all his life had finally caught up with him, forcing him to retire early. He could no longer handle heavy work. Mom, already worn down by age and stress, cut back her hours at the accounting job she had clung to for decades. Suddenly, the family income collapsed.
Every dollar mattered.
Bills stacked up. Medication costs piled higher. Hearing my mother's worry through the receiver crushed me. The strong woman who had once lectured me about being more like my brother now sounded fragile, weighed down by fear. I knew in that moment I couldn't stand by and watch them drown. So I made a decision. Each month, I would send them money. Enough to ease the burden. Enough to cover what they couldn't. It wasn't easy. Life in Austin wasn't cheap, and I was still fighting off loans. But I carved out $2,500 from every paycheck. I told myself this wasn't about showing off. I didn't want recognition or thanks. I just wanted them safe. I wanted them secure. There was one problem. My parents were old-fashioned. My mother, in particular, hated technology. Bank apps are too complicated, she always said. They trusted cash, nothing else. And that left me stuck. Then I thought of Chase. He was still in Beckley, still close to them. I picked up the phone, my heart steady with resolve. I explained my plan. I'd transfer the money into his account each month. He could withdraw it in cash, then hand it directly to Mom and Dad.
Simple.
Convenient. A way to care for them without forcing them to wrestle with technology they despised. I believed it was the right solution. I believed Chase would come through. It'll be quick. Simple. I told him over the phone. Chase didn't hesitate. His voice was full of that same bright confidence that had always won people over. Don't worry, big bro. I'll handle it. I trusted him. Despite his recklessness, despite the flashy lifestyle that sometimes made me shake my head, he was still my little brother. The same boy who once played ball with me in our yard in Beckley. The same kid I used to protect. In my heart, I believed he would never betray the family. So, each month, without fail, I wired the money into his account. I was blind, Alvin. I thought you didn't care. I thought Chase was the one looking out for us. I never imagined. His voice trailed off. He didn't have the words. His eyes reddened, and for the first time in my life, he looked at me as his son, not as Chase's shadow. Around us, whispers spread like wildfire. Aunt Linda, who had always praised Chase, set her teacup down with a faint clink. Her expression was shaken, confused, as if the foundation of her judgments had just cracked. Uncle Frank looked straight at me, his voice low but steady. Alvin, I had no idea. I thought wrong. His eyes, for the first time, carried respect. Neighbors muttered, stunned. Turns out Alvin's the one carrying the family? Who would have thought? Their words blurred in my ears. My chest rose and fell with the weight of it all. The truth was out. But instead of relief, I felt only exhaustion. I had never wanted recognition. All I had wanted was for Mom and Dad to live without worry. But now I understood. My trust had been shattered. My sacrifices had been clouded by lies and favoritism. Chase lifted his head. His eyes, red with shame, searched for forgiveness. Alvin, I'll pay it back.
I swear.
I'll make it right. But promises, I realized, are fragile things. I had no reason to believe them anymore. I drew in a breath, steadying my voice.
Mom.
Dad. My eyes swept the room, my tone calm but resolute. I never wanted this. I never wanted tonight to turn into this. All I wanted was for you to live well, to live without fear. But after everything, I can't keep pretending. I can't keep living like before. Mom looked at me, her face streaked with tears. She tried to speak, but I raised my hand gently, stopping her. This time, I needed to finish. I needed to draw the lines I had avoided my entire life. If you want me to keep supporting you, I said slowly, firmly, I have conditions. First, no more comparisons. I've lived in Chase's shadow long enough. I am not his copy. I'm Alvin. That's who I am, and that's enough. I turned from Mom to Dad, my gaze steady. Second, everything has to be transparent. From now on, the money goes directly to you, or I'll pay the bills myself. I need to know it's used for what matters. And third, Chase contributes too. If he wants to be part of this family, he has to take responsibility. No more empty promises. The room went quiet. The air felt heavy, but it was different now, charged, shifting. Mom nodded, her tears falling freely. Her voice shook. Alvin, I agree. I was wrong.
I won't compare you again.
I just wanted harmony in this family, but I see now I made mistakes. Big ones. Dad nodded too, his voice gravelly but strong. You're right. From now on, transparency. No more secrets. No more lies. Finally, Chase lifted his face. His cheeks flushed, his eyes wet, but for the first time, there was something else in them, something like resolve.
His voice wavered.
Alvin, I know I was wrong. I'm not just saying sorry. I'll change. I'll contribute. I'll help Mom and Dad. I'll live differently. He looked at me, his eyes pleading not just for forgiveness, but for one more chance. I don't want to lose this family. I don't want you to think badly of me forever. Chase's words fell heavy in the room. I couldn't tell if they were true or just another fragile promise, but they reached something soft in me. Not forgiveness. At least not yet. But something close. Pamela leaned closer, her hand brushing mine. A faint smile touched her lips. She whispered, You did well, Alvin. Boundaries matter. They'll understand. Her voice carried a quiet strength that steadied me. She turned toward my mother, her tone gentle but unshakable. Ma'am, this isn't easy, but Alvin just wants fairness. He loves you. He loves your husband. He's only asking for honesty and respect. Mom's eyes welled again. She clasped Pamela's hand, nodding, a shaky smile flickering as though she had words but couldn't form them. The birthday party, meant to be light, warm, filled with candles and cake, had become a crossroads. A night that split our family story into a before and after. Mom rose, wiping her cheeks, and wrapped me in a fierce embrace. Her voice trembled against my ear. My son, I'm proud of you. I'll never forget what you've done. Dad, too weak to stand, gripped my hand, his gaze steady, full of gratitude. And for the first time, I felt something I had longed for my entire life. Their love, free of comparison, clear, unclouded. The evening ended in silence. No cake was cut, no glasses raised. Relatives drifted out, one by one, whispers trailing in their wake. Whispers about Chase, about me, about the truth that could no longer be hidden. When the door finally closed, Pamela's hand found mine again. Her eyes locked on mine, steady, grounding. Are you okay? She asked softly. I nodded, but deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. Relief mixed with pain. I had been seen at last, but trust had been broken, and betrayal still lingered like smoke after fire. I glanced at my parents, then at Chase. My family, my blood, my heart. And I wondered, could the cracks ever truly heal? The months that followed became a test of resolve. I returned to Austin, back to my desk of glowing screens and endless code. But I carried with me a new clarity. My love for my parents remained, but it would now live inside boundaries that protected me too. I opened a joint account with Mom. I taught her, step by step, how to check balances on her phone. She grumbled that the app was too confusing, but I made sure she learned. Every month, I wired $2,500, sometimes a little more if she mentioned unexpected bills, plumbing repairs, medication for Dad. I sent receipts. I called after each transfer. I double-checked until there was no room for shadows. I can't let the past repeat, I told her over the phone, my voice steady. Her face appeared on the video call, framed by familiar walls back home. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I understand, Alvin. I won't let it happen again. And they did change.
Slowly, but they did.
Mom stopped holding me against Chase. No more lines like, your brother this or your brother that. Instead, she began asking about me, about my life, my work. Being an engineer must be tough, right? She said once, her voice filled with curiosity. For the first time, I felt she wanted to step into my world. The world of code, of circuits, of late nights solving puzzles only machines could answer. Dad, though his health kept fading, began to speak of me with pride. He told neighbors about Alvin, the engineer in Austin. One evening he called, his voice hoarse but warm, and said the words I had waited my whole life to hear. I'm proud of you, Alvin. I was wrong not to see it sooner. Those words didn't erase the scars, but they soothed them, like a hand pressed gently over an old wound. Chase stumbled in the aftermath. The image he had built collapsed and reality hit hard. He admitted the truth to me one night over the phone. His big projects had been nothing but reckless gambles. He was drowning in debt, banks, friends, even loan sharks. Alvin, he said, voice breaking, I tried so hard to make them proud, but I went down the wrong road. I didn't know how to console him. All I could offer was advice. Start small. Find a steady job. Rebuild. One step at a time. For once, he listened. He found work at an auto repair shop in Beckley. The pay was modest, but it was honest. Each month, he sent $300 home. Not much, but enough to show effort. Mom told me he was around more, fixing the fence with Dad, carrying her bags at the market. He's trying, Alvin, she said softly. I know he was wrong, but I believe he'll change. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of competition fall away. I didn't need to measure myself against him anymore. I was no longer a shadow. I was Alvin, an engineer, a son, a man building a life of his own design. In Austin, my career thrived. I was promoted to project leader, guiding a team of young, ambitious engineers. Pamela was always there, steady, loving, reminding me of my worth when doubt crept in. She wasn't just my partner. She was my anchor, my proof that I deserved love and respect. A year after that night, the night everything changed, Pamela and I married. We chose a small church just outside Austin. Wooden pews, stained glass windows spilling soft light across the floor. Pamela insisted on white daisies, a nod to Mom's garden back home. She arranged for an acoustic band, their music delicate and full of love. I had wanted something simple, but Pamela had the gift of weaving meaning into every detail. Handwritten cards for guests. A dessert table lined with homemade cookies. A photo booth with a carved wooden frame etched with our names. This is our day, Alvin, she said, her eyes glimmering. But it's also a day for your family to see your happiness.
Chase came.
Not in a flashy suit, not with a designer watch. Just simple clothes, a humble smile. He hugged me, his voice low. Congratulations, Alvin. I'm trying to be better. I didn't bring up the past. I only nodded, hoping, praying he meant it. That day was filled with joy. Pure joy. No shadows. No comparisons. Just love, laughter, and the quiet strength of a new beginning. Relatives from Beckley filled the pews, faces I had grown up around, voices that once carried words I dreaded to hear. Aunt Linda, who had always doted on Chase, leaned toward Uncle Frank with a softened expression. Her eyes, which once overlooked me entirely, now rested on me with warmth. "Alvin's truly a wonderful son," she said. The words, simple as they were, struck me like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time, respect flowed toward me without condition, without comparison. I smiled, not out of pride, but out of relief. Fairness had finally found its place in my life. Then Pamela walked in. She moved slowly down the aisle, her white dress glimmering in the gentle light filtering through stained glass. Her hair fell like silk, her eyes shimmering with a joy that seemed to light the entire church. The music swelled, a tender acoustic melody filling the air, and as she reached me, her hand sliding into mine, I felt time itself pause. This wasn't just a new chapter. This was a rebirth, not only for me, but for my family. The ceremony unfolded in a quiet rhythm of joy. No comparisons, no shadows, only love, pure and undeniable. When it came time to speak my vows, I looked into Pamela's eyes and felt my voice steady, strong. "I promise to love you, to honor you, to cherish you, just as you've helped me discover who I really am." Tears gathered in her eyes. Her voice trembled, but her words carried the weight of truth. "And I promise to stand by you, Alvin, no matter what storms come." We exchanged rings, simple bands that meant everything, and when our lips met, the church erupted in applause. I lifted my gaze through the blur of emotion, Mom dabbing her eyes, Dad smiling weakly but proudly, and Chase, standing near the corner, giving me a small, deliberate nod. Not envy, not rivalry, support. For the first time in years, I felt the fractured pieces of my family slowly binding together, not with illusion, but with honesty. Years rolled forward, steady and kind. Pamela and I built a home in Austin. A small house with a patch of garden where she planted daisies, her quiet tribute to the flowers that had once filled my mother's yard in Beckley. Every morning those blossoms reminded me that roots could grow stronger even after storms. I stayed at the tech company, climbing higher, leading teams, shaping projects. Pamela launched her own marketing consultancy, and I watched her creativity bloom into something powerful and deeply hers. We built not just a house, but a life woven with laughter, shared dinners, late-night talks about dreams that once felt distant but were now within reach. We visited my parents often, carrying thoughtful gifts, a new camera for Mom, a cushioned armchair for Dad. But the real gift was in the way they welcomed us, with open arms, with stories not centered around Chase, but around gardens, neighbors, and genuine curiosity about our life in Austin. "As long as you're happy, I'm happy," Mom said once, her eyes soft and unclouded. That single line meant more than years of forced comparisons. Chase, too, found his footing. Slowly, imperfectly, but truly. He chipped away at his debts until they were gone. His hands, once desperate to maintain an image, found honest work. First at the auto shop. Later, his own modest garage in Beckley. Not flashy, not glamorous, but his.
And it was enough.
Every month, he sent a few $100s to Mom and Dad. But his effort went beyond money. He fixed the roof, drove Dad to appointments, shared meals without pretense. One night he called me, his voice quieter, steadier than I had ever heard. "Alvin, I know I messed up, but I'm trying to be someone you can be proud of." I smiled, holding the phone to my ear. "Keep trying, Chase. I believe in you." And this time, I truly meant it. For the first time, I saw not the rival brother, not the golden child, not the betrayer, but simply Chase. My brother. Looking back now, I see the journey clearly. From the boy in Beckley, quiet, overlooked, pressed into shadows, to the man standing beside Pamela, building a life grounded in love, I understand something I couldn't before. Family is only strong when it is built on truth, on fairness, on love that doesn't measure or compare. Without that, love becomes a wound, silent, deep, and hard to heal. But when every person is valued for who they are, a family stops being a chain that binds. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a place to return to, a refuge. And finally, after years of struggle, that's what mine had become.